Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. So today I'm going to review the SIGI sword, which is the version of the SIGI feather without the shield, basically. First of all, I own this sword since 3 years now, and I waited quite a lot to do this kind of review, also because I wanted to talk in a legit sense about the durability of SIGI swords, and of course now I can do it. So let's start by saying that the main feature of every single SIGI feather around is their safety, right? So the SIGI feathers are all really safe. I mean, they are this safe, right? This is common for every single SIGI feather, and this is why I am basically advising every one of my students to buy this kind of feathers right now, simply because I am more relaxed in knowing that they are using this kind of training tool when they are sparring or training or whatever. This means that you can thrust safely, that you can thrust, let's say, more without concern about your training partner, let's say with lesser concern for their safety. You should always have it. But you can forgive it a little bit and let's say focus a little bit more on what you're doing, and this is really important. So safety aside, which is as I said before, common for every kind of SIGI sword, let's talk about this sword in the specific. So first of all, the main motivation because many people tend to buy the SIGI sword compared to the feather is because there isn't the shield. So some people which are, let's say, really into the idea that they don't want a sword with the shield because of various motivation. They study Italian sources, they don't like feathers in general or whatever. So having a sword like this with this width without the shield makes you be more, let's say, need more attention in pairing, right? Especially if you keep the thumb on the blade all the time. Simply because the width of the blade tend to be as wide or lesser wide than any kind of thumb that you find around in the gloves. So you may receive quite a lot of hits on your thumb if you don't pay attention on where you place it. So you can place it slightly backward, for example, or you just can pair in with different angles, so you don't receive every time the blade on the crossguard close to your thumb. So you have to slightly adapt in this sense, because of course we know that we use bulky gloves while using longsword because of safety, and so you have to always take this in consideration when you buy this kind of sword. That's aside, not having the shield in this case, so if you compare, for example, this sword with the concept, with the standard feather, whatever, it is slightly more tip heavy. You also notice it when you buy it in the studs. So basically the balance is just a centimeter forward compared to, basically, I don't say every other SIGI feather, but for example, compared to the concept, as I said before, or the standard feather, is a centimeter forward. This means that having more weight forward, it is of course pros and cons. It is slightly lesser nimble in certain situations, but I mean slightly, just a tiny bit, because the difference is minor. But for example, if I fight with this one against the concept, I feel that when I'm pairing, I am more solid into the parry compared to pairing with the concept against this one. When I'm using this one, I know that when I thrust in the bind, if I do an opposition, I keep control of the opponent blade more easily, generally speaking, broadly speaking. So in a sense, you basically have a pro in binding actions, pairing, thrusting in the bind, whatever. You have slightly some cons, let's say, in nimbleness of your sword. So if you rely a lot on feints, maybe you prefer the concept or the standard feather. If you are more a bind defensor and you rely a lot on parry, riposte, etc., you may prefer this kind of sword. So this is probably the most important thing which differs, which makes this sword, this feather, different from the others. Besides, of course, not having the shield, which is again the motivation because many people tend to buy it. It is the cheaper one, funny enough. I mean, just by a tiny bit, simply because you don't have the shield, so it costs a tiny bit lesser than the standard feather. Now prices are changed, but if I remember correctly, it is the same thing. So the price is slightly lower compared to the standard feather. Talking about, as I said before, it is lesser nimble, for example, than a concept or, well, especially the concept, which is a really nimble sword compared to the other SIGIs. But it is definitely a nimble sword, so you don't have to consider it sword which is hard to move around, whatever, or to like do very tiny cavazioni or whatever. It's a nimble sword. It's really good. It is just slightly lesser nimble than the others, than some other models offered by SIGI. Talking about durability now, so this is really important. Durability, and here of course I am talking about every single SIGI. I'm also talking about my concept. I am using my concept since 1 year and 3-4 months or something like that now. And I basically use the concept, I don't say for every training, but for the majority of trainings. And the durability of SIGI is pretty good. I didn't experience any kind of blur, major blur, in tons and tons and tons of sparrings, hard sparrings, generally speaking, and the tournaments too. So like the blade, I never had to adjust this kind of blade in any sense, to grind it or whatever, and it is perfect. So I can slide my hand over it and do not have any kind of problem in doing it. And like SIGI swords are really durable, and they are really safe at the same time. So this makes this sword a really good investment for either both beginners and experienced people. So main features, I already told them. The other parts of this SIGI are the same. If you have seen my review of the concept, more or less it's the same. So one important thing that SIGI has, generally speaking, is that you will never basically experience, if not minimal, rattle in the crossguard. So the crossguard is fixed in a smart way, let's say, so that it never moves. It doesn't matter how much hits it receives. It may be just a tiny creak, you may feel it. This one doesn't have it. My concept had it, and what I just had to I had to do to fix it was just to put some oil into it, that basically it filled every empty part, and it doesn't do it anymore. So basically the crossguard of SIGI fixes one of the major problems that people experience, which is it's not really a problem in terms of in a practical sense, but it's more about psychologically speaking, because if you hate hearing that rattle, I mean, if it bothers you, so the SIGI, let's say, fixed this kind of problem in every single sense. Talking about handling this sword is pretty good. I really like it. As I mentioned before, I really enjoy it because it is like strong in the bite, strong in the parries. That's the motivation, because I like it the most. So that said, a really good sword, relatively cheap, because like now prices are growing because of like energy crisis and whatever, and the producers in Europe have to raise prices. But it's relatively cheap, really safe, really strong in the bind compared to other SIGIs, pretty nimble anyway, and so a very good sword. So that said, people, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Remember to check my Patreon page in the video description if you want to help this channel grow up, and if you want to help my work, of course. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.